Morning, everyone. My name is Brian Linshield. I'm a professor at Kansas State University. Kelsey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kelsey Harper. I'm the Foreign Language Department Chair and Spanish professor at Butler Community College.
And we're excited today to be able to present about interactive OERs. And so kind of going another level up on kind of maybe what you can do with an OER and thinking about how you can make it interactive versus something where it might be more passive and not having to have any sort of interaction with it. So some background on why we have an interest in this, I'd like to go to this article that was published in 2021. And so if you're interested, I think they're going to share a link to the slides. And so there are links to all the slides here that you have. And so you can go to the article if you want. But this is an article that really, and it's from an author that I've read before, and she really focuses on the different ways that we learn, or students learn. And it goes into looking at some of the purple bars are the lines that I really want to emphasize, that there's ample evidence that reading from screens negatively impacts performance compared to reading from paper-based. And so 3 meta-analyses have supported that. However, this meta-analysis focused, like it says up here, is interactive features that can be within more online sort of resources that are read from a screen. And they found that in this meta-analysis, that interactive features benefited reading performance. So in other words, you're talking about a screen-based resource possibly being not as effective as a paper-based resource, but adding these interactive features might be able to boost that so that you can have greater learning from the screen-based resource. And so some of the things specifically that were noted in there were questions with feedback, digital glossaries, and other collaboration tools were the things that were noted in this specific article. So that brings it, so I'm going to share some about my resource first, and then I'll turn it over to Kelsey, and she'll share some about her interactive resource to give you some ideas on what this might look like. So my specific resource is in a platform known as LibreText. The first aspect that I added was that I added some summative questions that are within there. And so there's 380 of these that have been embedded throughout the resource. And so I'll show you what this looks like. There's also a link that is within the presentation if you want to go look and see, what the resource looks like yourself. The questions are designed to be quick to answer, so most are multiple choice. And so the idea is that students can check their understanding relatively quickly. They receive one attempt to answer correctly, and then they get the score recorded. They also receive feedback on whether that answer is correct. There's a way that it works within the resource where I can assign different problem sets. So like by chapter, typically it doesn't have to work out all clean by chapter, but generally once a week they have a problem set that's due from the reading that they answer. And it's part of the structure of my course, which is low stakes assessment based. And then it's set up also where I'm piloting a Canvas LTI too, where the scores go back into the Canvas gradebook that they complete from that as well. So just as some background on what this looks like for me, for my specific course. So again, my stakes assessment here. So the class questions are questions that they answer during class when they come to class. And then there's a LibreText question. So they're open book, mostly multiple choice. They're very low stakes. So when I say low stakes, there's something like their chapter questions are worth a point. And there are somewhere in the range of 540 to 580 points in the course. And so it's low stakes assessment that they're including those towards. There's also, I have some quizzes that are due in my course, which are worth 7.5 points, and then their exams are worth 75 points. It's like gives you like some sort of idea. And so you see this idea of the stakes increasing, the difficulty increasing. And so that's part of the setup that there is in my course. So one of the things that I did want to also try to highlight here before we go look at the resource itself. And so this is from this article here, and you can go to the link if you want the article itself. This is what it looks like, this article that I'm referring to here. But one of the things we did is we did some student surveys from students that were using my resource that had these embedded questions in. And so we started asking questions like, what percent of time do you estimate you're spending on different sorts of aspects? And so this is the one that's most pertinent to this interactive OER ideas. While the percentage time in the platform answering questions and reviewing the answers related to the questions. And so they were asked like, what percent of that did they feel like they spent time doing? And so you can see that 60% for the campus, and my online students, I teach this class both campus and online based, so it's about 55%, so pretty consistent. But the thing that I interpret from this is that by adding these questions in, I probably doubled the amount of time my students were spending interacting with the information, because they said that they were spending 50% or more of their time with the questions beyond, the actual reading and the other sorts of aspects that are within my resource. And so I felt like this is something that's beneficial for their learning, because they're spending more time trying to interact with the material. So another feature that has come more recently, so the questions came first in a chronological order, is there's a dynamic glossary that's embedded within my resource as well. So there's about 850 terms that have been identified and defined. And so most of these utilize or adapted a definition from another resource. And so to give you a sense on what this looks like, and I'll show you this in a page here in a second, it looks like this. So any of the words you see here defined are the dynamic glossary identified ones. And so if they hover over it, and I'll show you what this looks like, it defines it in a blue box like what you see here. And so they get that definition right at that point in time where they're going through and learning the information. So they have that ability to be able to learn in that way. So this is the resource, and so this is the link, so I'm going to go and show you what it looks like here and what a page looks like within it. You can go and look at this. I will share, at least from background, I have a public version on LibreText, since that's this link I'm giving you. And then there's more of a version right now that is specific for my students. And so that has to do with the nature of the summative assessments and things that are within it that they're working through on how to get that the function in a little bit easier manner. So if you follow that link, you'll go to this. So this is what my resource looks like. So these are different chapters within it. So I'm going to take you to a page to show you what one page of it looks like. So this is what the page looks like within here. So it's designed not to be as text heavy, as a traditional text. It's got those embedded assessments in it, like you see there. This is a longer page, but I choose it because I don't have to flip lots of pages, for people to see. There's embedded video, within it. More assessments, more figures, more assessments, figures, more assessments. And so that's what one page looks like. So now if I go to the top, again, the underlines are the dynamic glossary that's available. So if they don't know what stomach is, they can hover over stomach and it'll define that for them. So that way they understand exactly what stomach is. So in order to see how the assessments work, so now we'll go into some of the more interactive nature of this. You can use this figure on top of here. It says a true false questions. You have 50% chance of getting it correct. So is this true or false? You know what I mean? So you put your answer in the chat, and we'll go with the majority rule on what I put in there, so you see how this question's answered. Okay, some false, false. Okay, so I'm not seeing trues, and so I don't think the trues are going to come back, here. So we're going to go with false. So hit false, they hit check. And so good job. You guys all got it correct. Big stars, for everybody. And then you see that whether they get it correct or not, it's going to give them this feedback, as well, on why the correct answer is what it is. And so that they get that immediate feedback while they're answering the question as far as the interactive nature of the resource. So I think that's what I wanted to share. And so now we're ready to allow my co-presenter to share about her resource.
Okay. Again, my name is Kelsey Harper. I'm at Butler Community College. And we got a lot of snow this morning, so I apologize in advance because maybe some of you are snowed in like me, and my presentation is going to be somewhat of an abbreviated version of what I would have had because I'm not at the office. But anyways, before I get started with this, I wanted to just kind of give a shout out to any language instructors that might be out there, and let you know that kind of foreign language or world language has its own world of OER that you might not know about. And I first found out about this world from my professor in grad school at Texas A&M. Her name is Gabriela Zapata. She is pretty well known, a leader in Spanish OER, developed a beginning Spanish textbook called Trayectos. So that's kind of how I found out about it. Why foreign language has made such ground in OER is because there was a government grant awarded to 16 different institutions across the United States to advance foreign language teaching and to make it free for everybody. So among these institutions were University of Kansas. They've got a great OER language center, University of Arizona, and University of Texas, Austin. All of these have a great mailing list you can sign up for. So I highly recommend signing up for those if you are a teacher of any language, because they've got some great resources for you and great monthly newsletters that talk about conferences coming up or ways that you can get involved, different OER projects, etc. So that's my little side note for the language teachers out there. So Brian presented some awesome research on the benefits of making OER interactive. And so it's important to remember that OER can be a text. It can be just a flat text, and I don't use that pejoratively, but it can be a text, but it can also be so much more. It doesn't have to be just something that you write or something that your department gets together and writes. It can be very multimedia. It doesn't have to be just words on a page or on a web page, I guess. So through the example of one of the OERs that I created, I hope to give you an example of how interactive OERs can be. So just to give you a little bit of background on what I developed and why, our community college has a great culinary program. And in this program, we had a course called, it used to be called Survival Spanish. And it always struck me as an odd title because it's kind of like presenting Spanish as something threatening or that's threatening your life or something, and you need to survive it. And, so I worked with the text that we had, but I noticed it was lacking in something. The students weren't very fond of it, to say the least, and something needed to be done. So I went out looking for, of course, OERs for Spanish for the professions, such as, and we talk about for the professions, we mean law enforcement, construction, culinary, or just business in general. And I really couldn't find anything out there for culinary or for anything for the professions. So the two pictures I have up here are examples of things that I was finding out there. And these were paid resources. These weren't even free. And it's just to give you an example of kind of what's out there. It's a lot of commands. It's a lot of, not knocking this style necessarily, but it's just not interactive and doesn't really bring the language to life. And a lot of it operated under the assumption that the only interactions that students would have with others in Spanish would be one of unequal power dynamics where they're telling the Spanish speaker what to do. So that's just not the reality of the students I was teaching. The Spanish speakers at their work are their peers. They're not in any position of power over them. So that was one major issue with the previous curriculum. So what I did was I got a group of culinary students together, surveyed them about the ways in which they use Spanish. Where do you use it? When do you use it? What do you wish you could say? What do you need to say? I think I asked them, tell me about a situation in which it would have been beneficial for you to know Spanish. So they all got to write these kind of, both quantitative and qualitative results for me. And I was able to build the course based on their feedback. So I highly recommend, if you go about developing an OER, if you have any if you have the ability to kind of ask the students what they need, what they're looking for, I recommend that because that really helped me get this course going in the right direction. Okay, Brian, I think I'm ready for the next slide. All right, so I'm not so sure that that link works, but this is what my course looks like. I built it within Canvas, although I have it in my kind of long-term to-do list to get it transferred to something that could possibly even be printed someday or onto LibreText, just to make it a little more available and a little more flexible for anybody that decides to use it, adapt it, remix it, whatever. So basically, we at Butler, we have to teach our courses in modules, the online courses. So this course was developed to be either face-to-face or online, just depending on which, it can sometimes be instructor preference, it can be just enrollment needs. Sometimes the face-to-face classes just don't have enough enrollment, so we put the class online, and that usually gets more students. That gets into a whole host of other issues. If you've ever taught language online, you know how difficult it is because we have to do, we've got to speak, right? It's a language. So assessing, speaking, trying to organize that, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, if it's going to be a recording, if how to get them to stop using translators when they talk to us, and etc. So keep in mind, this course it's not perfect, but it's got a great interactive aspect that can be used whether online or face-to-face. So can you scroll down a little bit, Brian, just to the first module? Okay, so the first module, every module starts with an overview. It starts with lessons, and then summative assessment tasks. So kind of like Brian was saying, we got those low stakes, just did you understand it? Did you not? So within any of those lessons, we'll see some low stakes, kind of like Canvas calls them quizzes, but that's just the default. That's the default naming. It's not really a quiz. I would call it more of a comprehension check. And then when we get to the quizzes, it's just based on all of those learning activities that they just saw. So if you can go back, Brian, and I don't know if it will. Oh, click on modules. And then just click on any of the lessons or any of the quizzes. Okay, so this is what it would look like. Some of this is adapted from another OER. So I didn't build this all from scratch. It was a tremendous amount of work because some of it was stuff that I wrote, some of it was from other OER. It was just pieced together by a lot of means. So if you're doing this yourself and you have any questions about doing it, feel free to reach out to me because I can definitely help. So this one would be, let's see, let's go to just one of the quizzes. Oh, okay, so it's not, oh, that's just a video. So basically they watch a video and they're answering the questions right then and there. So although it's a quiz, it's not just okay, remember what you read, review this, review that, now take this quiz. It's watch this new video that kind of synthesizes all these things that you learned and take the quiz right there. And I think it gives them automatic feedback. You could set it up either way. They can have multiple attempts if you want it to be more of a formative thing, or if you think they should know it by now, it can be summative, just one chance. And then one other thing I wanted to show, if you can go back, Ryan, and then click on any of those exploraciones, anything that starts with explorations. Exploraciones. There's one right there. There it is. Yeah, that's a great one to show. So I tried to incorporate aspects of community into this course as well. Of course, that might not make sense for people that want to use it that aren't from here. It would still work if you weren't from here and you wanted to use this resource. but you could also use it as an example to model after something that might make sense for where you live. So basically, I took the menu from a popular paleteria. It's one of my favorites. It's if you live near Wichita, it's on Amadon and 21st, somewhere over there. Amazing. But I basically downloaded their menu and developed a whole activity around it, because the menu is in, I wouldn't really say it's fully in Spanish, but it's a good mix of Spanish and English. So the students need to read the menu and answer the questions about it. Some are true or false, some are, and then it kind of ends with more open-ended, but it asks students to think about why the menu is in two languages, why it's not translated. If the menu doesn't translate all of it, it's just some of it's in Spanish, some of it's in English. And the conclusion that I hope the students draw is that it's written for a bilingual audience. So not a Spanish speaking audience, not an English speaking audience, but a bilingual audience. Right, so I think that's a really good example of kind of what this course is all about. Just getting that more interactive, getting them to interact more within their community. Some things ask them to go out and take photos of certain things in the community. And I just find that even in an online format, these type of activities really help to add that layer of interactivity that we desperately need in online courses. If you've ever taught purely online, you know the challenges. So, and I think that's all, Brian. I think that's all that I wanted to show.
Yeah, so we're at the part of our presentation where we're done with presenting, and so we're happy to answer questions, or if Brenda, so allows, I mean, if we get past, questions, even chat, to have people, even talk, I mean, and we can share, because it doesn't seem right to have an interactive OER presentation and then not have any interaction, so
Yeah.
So that's part of our thinking. So
yeah, or anything about the development process, or I mean, just anything.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. So yeah, I'm looking at the chat. And yeah, feel free to also unmute yourself and ask questions to the speakers. I did see a question just now that popped up, and it says, so your entire OER is built into Canvas?
Mine.
That's the question. Yours,
Mine.
Kelsey.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
mine, because our institution uses Canvas as an LMS. That was what was most convenient for me, but it can be, anything from here is public and can be downloaded for use. And then a long-term goal for me is to get it off of Canvas and onto a more public-friendly platform such as LibreText, or just a better way to share it.
Somebody else posted, can you both talk more about LibreText?
So I can, I guess, since I'm more familiar. But LibreText is a OER platform that is available. It's one that you can be utilized, for free, I guess, and things. And so that's one of the things. There's not your institution has to have a subscription, I mean, in order to be able to do this. It's more centralized, I mean, than some other OER platforms. And so like that, I mean, there is a central architecture to it. And there's a session later today, if you want to know more about LibreText, where it's an interactive session where they will go, specifically the actual creator, and the person behind it is joining us. And so, yeah, at 2 p.m. Thank you, Brenda, that you can go, and I know he's going to present and help walk people through that. If you want to learn more about it, that's a great opportunity to be able to do it. But there's a lot to it, what I mean, I guess. And if there's not other questions, Nancy, I can go down that rabbit hole, what I mean. But there's a lot to the Libreverse, as he likes to refer to it. So
I'm just going to jump in. This is Nancy. I'm the one who asked the question about LibreText. That word was new to me because I'm brand new to OER, and the fact that there's a session today is perfect. So thank you so much. And I see there's a really interesting question that I think everybody cares about.
And the other thing I will share, since you said you did Spanish, is there's a lot of Spanish OER on LibreText for whatever reason. He told me, I'm not sure exactly why. You know what I mean? We got so much Spanish OER, but they have quite a bit. You know what I mean? I guess in things.
Yeah, the Spanish on LibreText is like for native Spanish speakers, though. Not to say it can't be used, but it's like chemistry, but in Spanish, or nutrition, but in Spanish.
Interesting.
They have both, though, Kelsey. So they are translating. You know what I mean? They're doing both, but they also have a lot of foreign language Spanish, that they've gotten on there too, in addition to the translations. But
great. So
Perfect,
definitely
thank you.
attend that session in the afternoon. There's a question that was posted. It says, what has been your success with interactive OER as far as student engagement and learning?
So yeah, I can take that at least from my perspective. So I'll scroll down in this article, I guess that has some of this. And so there's quite a bit here, but one of the things that I guess I can share, Carl, to your question was, we looked at questions correct versus final grade. And so we saw a pretty high correlation, between them getting the questions correct I was telling you about and the final grade they earned in the course. At the time we did this, it was actually extra credit. And so I was not making them do it. But after I started to see some of the data that was coming out from it, I didn't feel like I could ethically not require them, to do it any longer, since I was seeing the sort of trends that I was seeing. And so we did some more breakdown just beyond the correlation here, where, for instance, we started to see a very, blatant or pretty noticeable trend that if they don't get at least 80% of the questions correct, that they're much higher risk of not being successful in the course. And so that's something that I do communicate with them. I actually have a page on Canvas that talks about why are we answering these questions, and it gives them some of this data and tries to provide that background to them. But if they get 80% of the questions correct, they usually are a pretty good chance they're not going to be a DFW student, if you're familiar with that, student success terminology and things, at least in my course. I know, Kelsey, you have anything from your resource or interactions you've had?
I will just say, the only data I got from this was kind of, I guess, from teaching it from one semester to the next, teaching my culinary course with the old curriculum, and then the very next semester incorporating the new, more interactive curriculum. And I could see a huge change just in the retention rate. Those are numbers that are recorded. Fewer students dropped from one semester to the next. And just the engagement is much higher. And it's more fun to teach too.
Great, there we go. Somebody had a question about Brian's article, and it looks like he posted it on the link. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments to the speakers? Please feel free, if you want, to unmute yourself and ask them directly too.
So this is Nancy again, and I'm sorry that you only see my frozen face, but I'm actually still in my pajamas. I'm on the West Coast, and it's this is lovely. I want to say this has been so helpful. I am brand spanking new to OER, and I didn't get to go to yesterday's session on sort of the 101 because I was teaching. So I don't want to ask any questions because I'm really such a, nothing, but I wanted to thank you guys. This is super interesting and kind of inspiring. And Kelsey, I'll be emailing you if that's okay, because I do teach Spanish and I need your help or your tips, I should say. Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
Nancy, we're glad to have you join, you know what I mean? And also keep in mind, and this is just in general, advice I guess I have about OER is, Rome's not built in a day, you know what I mean? And so a lot of things, I made my OER in 2009, and I've kind of been adding things. And I know you look at it and it's like, oh, there's like a lot of stuff, there is, but I didn't do it all at once, I guess is what I'm saying. I know I've gotten pretty good at taking big projects and being able to chunk them, you know what I mean? And then think about how I'm going to kind of progress through them. and taking satisfaction in the progress I'm making, I guess some things too in that. And so that I think it's important, for whatever OER work that, people are doing, that you have to start somewhere, and then hopefully you find different aspects you can continue to add. And so the questions were something that, a platform came available that could do that. And I thought it would help my students. And so I did that. And then I went to another platform, and then the dynamic glossary became available. And I was like, when I talk to my students, sometimes they have hard time even pronouncing, some of the words and things they're learning about. And so I was like, I think I can help, at least with them, understanding what's meant by those words and things, so that if they come in uneven, as far as when they start the course and their understanding, that hopefully as they get into the course and if they utilize the resources available, they can be on even footing and things on how successful they can be.
That's great advice, because I got to say, when I started listening to the first presentation, which was yours, Brian, I was like, oh my gosh, do we have to be computer programmers to make this happen? So I like that idea of just like going, little by little. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So no, you don't have to be a computer programmer. Some of the platforms and things that are available make it so that you're not dealing with code. You know what I mean, I guess, Nancy. And so they're trying to make it so that you don't have to do some of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Claire, like said in the chat, that there are going to be that 101 posted so that you could go view that as well.
I'm excited about that. Thank you, Claire, for pointing that out.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of that, because there's a lot of good ones that, there might be overlapping, and you have to choose to attend, but definitely go back, and once you get the links, be able to review them and watch the recordings. Definitely. Any other questions, comments? I'm looking at the chat and see if anybody's running them, or like I said, feel free to unmute yourself and share your comment or questions with our speakers. We definitely have definitely some time available for that. Somebody has wrote, they said, I wrote a textbook workbook in my grad program. Do I have to pay to put something up on LibreText?
No. So LibreText, also something they do is they do some harvesting. And so if you find like OER that you want to utilize that's not on the resource, that they have some people that work with them in order to help harvest and get it onto the platform for you and things. And so that's something that you can take advantage, of, well, that they help to get things onto the platform so that you can start to work with them. And as you go into like the 101 and learn more about it, so there's more things available for you to remix, and start to work from, if that's what your desire is to. And glad you're here though, Tracy, too, as well. So please ask any questions that you do have. And
yeah, definitely. Anybody else? Any comment or feedback or experiences that you might have? I know that people attending this session, if they're new, would love to hear from you too, or even the speakers if you're doing something similar.
It's Nancy again. Sorry, gang. I was waiting. I just have a question for Kelsey. Brian said he kind of took his time and slowly, added more and more OER elements into a course over years. Did you do that same thing, or were you like, okay, I'm converting my culinary Spanish class,
Mine
completely?
was done in a rush because the longer I had that old text, the longer I had to keep using it. So I was really motivated to have something better and something free, because that's something that has been linked to student retention and higher enrollment. If students have the course materials available on day one, then they're more likely to do well on the course. But to answer your question, it took me, I kind of had the luxury of working on it as I taught the course. So I would work a few weeks ahead and have those modules done. But then I would be teaching them, 1 week, 2 weeks after I created it, and then kind of did it that way. So it took me one full semester plus more to edit out the just to kind of edit everything that needed to be edited and refine it a little more. And I still do that every semester. Every semester I teach it, I find something that, could be improved, and or I'll find some other resource. I think this would look really cool here. So if you or anybody is thinking about making a full OER, don't do it all yourself. Look and see what's out there first. And any foreign language teachers out there, you can email me, and I can, if you're looking for something specific, let me know, and I can probably let you know if there's anything out there already. It was just in my particular case, there wasn't anything substantial for culinary Spanish, so that's why I had to kind of do it all myself. But that might not be your situation. In fact, it probably won't be unless you teach something very, very specialized.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Oh, definitely, it can be. It can be.
But it's exciting too, and I think it's great. I have a question. I see that there's a professor of Japanese here, and so another world languages question for you, Kelsey, although maybe Brian, you know this as well. One of the big things about language learning is just, having students do a lot of activities where they're just, conjugating those verbs and doing all that stuff. Does OER, is it typical to have, I saw that you guys have, you have quizzes and stuff in there, but do you have sort of the rote, just a bunch of activities just to get the students with really hitting that grammar hard? Is that out there? And basically the question is someone else grading all those little grammar exercises, or do I have to do it?
So for our more basic language classes, so that would be just beginning Spanish 1, 2, and intermediate Spanish, that's where we will see more of the grammar exercises, but we don't currently use OER for that. In part because it would be such a huge project, right? It's a course sequence. It's not just one course. And then secondly, we have a number of adjuncts teaching the course, and sometimes we have adjuncts for just one semester. So it needs to be something turnkey that I can just hand to them, and they could figure out with little to no, sometimes they start teaching the week before classes start, or they get employed the week before classes start. So it needs to be something turnkey, easy to figure out. OER is not, it's not to say we won't do it in the future, but for those courses that are a little more grammar based, we have things online, but it's definitely a paid textbook thing. Now for my culinary class, there's only a small focus on grammar because these students need to communicate with their coworkers. That's the purpose of, that's why they're in the course, really. So there's just a heavy focus on spoken communication and basic written communication. I'm not super concerned with the form as much as the function. So by the end of the class, they should be able to get basic subjects correct, whether they're talking about me or you or someone else. But yeah, I guess all that to say there's not a heavy grammar focus on the class, just a lot of conversation practice.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see a lot of questions on LibreText, so I definitely recommend people attending the session in the afternoon. And Brian has been answering some of those questions in the text, in the chat, so thanks for doing that. And let's see. So someone says, I teach at JCC as the evening Zoom elementary Japanese 1 professor, and they teach also in the Kansas City Art Institute. So definitely looks like there's several people that teach in the languages.
Mm-hmm. And there's some great Japanese resources on, I can't remember if it's University of Texas Language Center, which is called Coral. It's COERLL. And then KU is, I forgot what it's called. I think they have Japanese as well, Center for Open Education Resources.
And it looks like somebody says they've heard of it, and then they also say they use Gathered Town for in-person activities. If that's something new.
Ooh, no, I haven't heard of it.
Great. Anyone else have any questions or comments? I know that some of the stuff in the chat, I definitely recommend people that are attending right now to read some of the comments and the questions about the discussion about LibreText and all of that.
Just Nancy again, hopping in to say, I know that Coral has its second annual OER conference for language teaching, March 5th. And so you can go to either Kansas, so KU, or it's UT Austin as well, and find that. And I've registered, it appears to be free. It's virtual.
Yes.
So I'm excited. Are you going to
Yeah.
be there, Kelsey?
Yes, I will be.
Perfect.
I'll see you.
Great.
Thanks for
Yeah.
finding it, Claire. And shout out to all the foreign language people that have enough interest to have their own conference, related to OER. That's fantastic. So.
Yeah, would you mind sending? I know some people are asking maybe like the link to the. Oh, there we go. I think Claire put some of that in the chat for some of the events. So definitely, there we go. Keep that in mind for that. It's there listed if you want to take a look at that for that conference itself. Definitely, that's really good. Awesome. So if there's no other questions or comments, we really are thankful for you attending this session. And you had a lot of great questions and comments. So thank you so much. And hope to see you in the other sessions. And thank you so much for attending this session.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the speakers too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.